Is Islam a challenge, a threat, or an opportunity to European culture? Can Islam find its own European identity? And with Mayor Douglas Murray, Taj Hagi and Khola Hassan. I wanted to talk to someone who came to Islam with no specific Muslim cultural baggage. Hadia Massi is a wife and mother of 3 who runs her own housing development company and has her own Islamic clothing outlet for women. Her religious background is, to say the least, eclectic. She comes from a Hindu family and attended Christian schools.
I came to Islam on a very spiritual high note, wanting to learn more, but found myself finding it difficult to learn and only being exposed to people in a mosque who weren't able to speak my language, or the people at university who were speaking a very political dimension of Islam, which attracted me, putting different notions that there is an attack on Islam, that the Western nations are trying to destroy Islam, and the reason why people have negative opinions of Islam is because of the outward attempt to destroy the religion. And I felt, oh yeah, maybe that's true, because I once had very negative opinions of Islam, and maybe it was being done purposely. I fell prey to some of their rhetoric and their very black and white view of things.
I think this organisation is Hizb ut-Tahrir, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
What did you do when you joined Hizb ut-Tahrir? What sort of activities did you become involved in?
I was involved for about 10 years. I sincerely believe there was an attack on Islam, and that in order for Muslims to protect themselves, they needed to unite and work behind one Islamic State. So I promoted the idea of an Islamic State as the only solution to help the Muslims from the oppression of the West. So I was absolutely convinced of that.
And was there a sense that Europe was a hostile country for Islam?
Europe is different, I'd say, to Britain. So when we looked at the European countries, we could see that the Muslims there were having quite a hard time expressing their religious beliefs, and the general attitude of Europeans towards Muslims was very negative. They were very suspicious of the Muslims, and then that made, in turn, the Muslims suspicious of them.
Now, you've changed completely. You've turned your back on all that extremism.
Yes.
What sort of things are you doing now to try to remedy the situation?
When I came out, I realised that it was my lack of knowledge that actually made me go down that route, and I felt quite bitter about it. And I started to work with a group called Three Faith Forum, Muju, which is a Muslim and Jewish arts collaboration, and starting to meet new people. I looked into Sufism, looked more into other aspects of the Islamic belief, and realised that it was complete opposite to what I was led to believe. I feel it's my duty, now that I have both sides of the perspective, to try and go into universities and different communities and explain different perspectives.
One logical inference from what you're doing now is that the problem actually lies within the Islamic community.
I won't deny that some of it does, but a vast majority of the Muslim community are very willing to open and have interfaith dialogue and social cohesion events. I think things are looking good, but they shouldn't be falsely made out that they're just closed people.
Do you think that Muslims can come to terms with British culture?
Oh, that's a tricky one. I mean, Muslims are of all different backgrounds. I know lots of people who are converts to Islam or British, and they don't know anything other than the British culture. If you talk about Muslims from Somalia, from Pakistan, from Bangladesh, then they have got different cultures. So some of them battle, some of them find it quite easy. I don't know, that's quite a difficult question, because Muslim to me doesn't mean a country, it's a faith. It shouldn't really conflict with being British.
That was Hadia Massi, and Douglas, like Khola, she is entirely comfortable with being British and Muslim.
Yeah, well, I'm very glad. I'd stress that the problem at the moment is that there is a fight over the soul and identity of young Muslims. In Europe and in Britain, we long ago made this society work in a multi-faith way by saying to people that effectively, if you held religious faith, this is fine, this is part of your private life, like all sorts of other things. Many Muslims, certainly, have found this part of it, that faith can inspire your politics, but cannot be the basis for a political movement. They found this very hard. Islam currently has very large numbers of people who are willing to say laws should be dictated or should be decided upon, should be influenced by what our alleged holy book says. There is a big problem here, because for simple decency, for perceived tolerance, many lawmakers and others would like to give some kind of ground on this, and I think no ground can be given.
So is there a place for Sharia law in British society?
No. I think it's important to understand that what Sharia is firstly. Sharia is a medieval collection of religious opinion. It is not written in stone. It is not divine. Some Muslim extremists would say, no, it is divine. I'll give you one example where Sharia law totally conflicts with the Quran. The Quran says the punishment for adultery and fornication is 100 lashes. The Sharia says no. They make a distinction between the fornicator, those who are unmarried, give them 100 lashes, but the adulterer who's married, stone them to death. This is entirely against the Quran. I do not want a Sharia here because firstly, whose Sharia are you talking about? Are you talking Wahhabi Sharia, Salafi Sharia, Bangladeshi Sharia, Moroccan Sharia? Whose Sharia are you talking about? When people talk about Sharia, they must be very clear that it's not divine. But somehow Muslims have been programmed and brainwashed to think that Sharia is divine, and there are others who believe it isn't, like myself.
Kola, what about the outward symbols of Islamic identity? For instance, the hijab. And I know you wear a very attractive coloured headscarf. How important is that? Is it an essential part of a woman's behaviour within Islam?
For me, yes, it is. For me, there is a Quranic injunction to do with modesty and the headscarf.
Others would disagree with that.
Others would disagree with that.
Yes.
Yeah, there are many people who disagree with that. Yeah. But that is not the issue. Does the fact that I have a small piece of cloth, a nice pretty blue one today, does that in any way affect the society around me? Does that in any way encroach on secular society?
The blue headscarf doesn't, but if you're covered from head to toe and you
which
can't
I
even see
absolutely
the
agree
eyes,
with.
do you approve of French society when it says that the burqa, for instance, should be banished from public life?
Well, given that there are only a few hundred women who probably wear it in France, I think they are actually worrying about issues that are very unimportant.
No, but that's not the point here, Hola. The point here is the principle. The principle is here, okay, I myself as a man cannot wear balaclava down the street, yet a woman can cover her face. Now, we are supposed to live in an equal rights society where the laws are applied to both men and women. Why can't I go to Barclays Bank with a balaclava and you can go in there with a niqab? By the way, the word niqab or burqa doesn't even appear in the Quran. So why are we legitimizing that? Now, this is a cultural tradition of Saudi Arabia, of Yemen, of parts of Afghanistan, or whatever. I do not want it to be imported in this country.
But what I find worrying is, I think that we're going away from the actual topic, because the burqa or the niqab or the whole, the black tent that some women wear is actually a very minority issue for the Muslim community. When we talk about the implementation of Sharia, there's a lot of warmongering going on. There's a lot of alarm bells ringing to frighten the world into thinking, here are the Muslims with their swords unsheathed trying to take over. And that is clearly not happening. As far as the Sharia is concerned, Sharia includes prayer. So the fact that I will go to my house and pray as soon as I get there, is that affecting civil society around me? No, it isn't.
No, people worry when they think that Sharia law is going to become part of British life. They think inevitably of harsh punishment.
Oh, lots
Nobody's
of
asking
people are. Sorry, that's just not true.
Well, that's probably Hizb ut-Tahrir, again, who are a minority.
No, the Wahhabis and Salafis coming now.
No, that's very unfair.
Well.
That's very unfair.
No,
that's not true.
there are numerous people advancing the cause of Sharia law in Britain, among other places, which is why people are very worried about it. I don't want to bring the Archbishop of Canterbury into this.
But he was talking about family law anyway.
Yes, but this also...
Family law
is a great concern to a lot of people in this country. I've interviewed many women in Birmingham and elsewhere who have been subjected to so-called arbitration at Sharia courts, which they have not volunteered for. This is an appalling infringement on the rights of women in Britain, British women, who should be treated as women first, as British citizens first, and then, if they want to be arbitrated in a Sharia way, they could volunteer for this. But this is a terrible divide we're making.